As the title says, we're going to be going over a plugin that if you saw on my Twitter, actually, I was roasting over the weekend. Because KSHMR, if y'all don't know KSHMR is a big room house producer and is known for his Splice sample packs. Is also known for stealing in most of his Splice sample packs. And he decided to put out a plugin, a VST, and we're going to talk about it. How's it going, E-Bunk? Yeah, I don't think VR had beef, but KSHMR definitely stole Virtual Riot samples in his second sample pack, to the point where now those samples are literally labeled as VRs. They're literally labeled as Virtual Riot samples. He has gotten in trouble for also taking samples straight out of Contact libraries. He's gotten in trouble for taking essentially Mick Gordon samples from Doom and reappropriating them. He has a pretty extensive history of basically either just straight up stealing content or hiring people to work on a sample pack who will straight up steal content or do essentially one-to-one recreations of other people's work, which I don't know if he would actually do, but it sets a precedent. It sets a precedent of behavior for KSHMR and for things that are associated with the KSHMR brand. And now I take every single thing that KSHMR puts out with a grain of salt, with some sort of skepticism as far as the validity or the veracity of these sorts of claims and of these sorts of products. And then he came out with this shit. Yeah, this thing is literally $100, $5 a month for 20 months. For almost 2 years, you're going to get nickel and dimed out of $5 for this plugin. Now, I want to show you the actual trailer for this before we get into everything that's just like bad. Everything that's just bad about this fucking plugin, okay? Because we're already on a level of I don't trust KSHMR. And then we have this.
I'm really a producer before everything, and I love plugins. And like any other nerdy producer, I just collect.
Nerdy producer, by the way. Nerdy producer with a huge-ass studio with like what looks to be essentially a bunch of reference tracks and a sample pack loop to show off the plugin. Like, if I'm not crazy, let's high def this. Yep, looks like a KSHMR 3 hip hop loop. Okay, and let's look at these. Let's look at what these are. These are finished songs, right? These look like finished songs, right? And we can see he's just going into sounds of KSHMR and then grabbing some sounds of KSHMR loops.
Oh, quote unquote, I really like simple plugins. Plugins that have a nice interface, there's only a few knobs, and I can trust they'll make stuff sound good. Originally, that was the whole idea, was one knob, it sounds better, like a sound goodizer. But I started to realize that was a bit too limiting. You really couldn't find one setting for a kick that's also gonna work on a vocal. So, started to snowball a little bit, and I said, well, what if there's 5 settings? What if there's vocal, synth, bass, kick, and drums? And then what if in each setting, we only have, 4 knobs or something? And then we were making the 4 knobs, and I said, well, really, you kind of want more like 8 knobs. Can we do this and still make it?
Now, I want you all to keep that number in your head. 8 knobs. Okay? I want you to keep the number 8 in your head for a while, okay? Because it's going to take us at least 5 minutes to get into that. But I really want you to keep that number in your head. 8 knobs. And I want you to think about what else has 8 knobs.
simple, and through a lot of experimentation, we finally got there. So when you first open up the plugin, you're gonna see on the top here are your main categories of instruments. Depending on the category that you click.
Now, keep in mind, apparently, the effects you put on your drums are different from the effects you put on your kick. Please make sure, do not put the drums effect on your kick drum. Please make sure not to put the kick effect on your drums.
Click, you're gonna have 8 options.
Such great names, by the way. Harm X, Fuzz, Pressure, Excite, Side Cut. Okay, well, I guess we know what that does. Width. Okay, Comp. I guess it's a compressor. But then what's the difference between pressure and compressor?
Some compression, some width control. In drums, you get transients, details, air.
What are details? What is air? I mean, we know basically what air is. We do know basically what air is. But we'll get to it.
Kick, again, transients, air, pressure, synths, details. So some of the parameters are shared between instruments, but the buttons actually still do different things. They're going to be tailored to the specific instrument page that you are.
I'll give you all a hint. I'm going to give you all a hint. No, they don't. They really don't. They really don't do different things. Maybe they sound different, but we'll look at things that make this not necessarily the case.
On. So the first thing that we're going to look at is this song starter. Now, if we look at what's going on, we have the synth category selected, because this is a synth. We're adding some body. We're adding some presence. Presence is an EQ curve that I've designed for synths that I think works well to make it poke out of a mix. We have air, which gives you nice sizzling high frequencies. We have the exciter, which is exciting the sound in a multi-band way. So it's essentially saturation that's helping out some of the highs, helping out some of the mids. Details is one of my...
That's called OTT, by the way. That's just called OTT, by the way.
Favorite parameters. Details introduces a parallel signal. It takes your sound and duplicates it, but on the duplicate, it's totally squashed. So that means all of the really quiet sounds in your synth are going to be lifted up and brought.
This is also, by the way, OTT. This is also OTT.
Up
parallel multi-band compression.
Case, things like the reverb that would normally be quiet will get lifted up in the mix, and it will sort of fill out the sound. Pressure is multi-band compression. Expand is going to be width. It does some stereo imaging, especially accentuating the mids and the highs. And glue is simply glue compression. So if we look at our signal, by using the waveform, we can actually look and see that it's got a lot of dynamics, and as we increase the mix, it still has dynamics, but it's much thicker. So if you compare it to...
It literally just sounds like you put OTT on it.
Essentials,
yeah, it's just OTT, basically.
To afterwards. It makes a big difference. One of the things...
Yeah, because you literally just put a high shelf boost on it.
I'm very proud of also is the fact that you can see the waveform. So you see the change that's being made as the audio comes in and as it goes out. For me as a producer, I'm very big on seeing what I hear. It gives me confidence, it gives me confirmation that I know what I'm hearing. Kick, I really thought should be separate from the overall drums. So lumping it in with just drums didn't feel right. So if we look,
I really want to do like a YouTube poop of this, and like every time he stops talking, I want to just put in other sounds. Like I just want to put in, like I want to do like the thing that Kill the Noise did to the Ableton Live 10 update thing.
See, if you know what the root note is of your song, you probably want to go with that. These mids allow you to create a bit of a
that can be a challenge, yeah.
Or, an increase in the mids. depending on what you feel it needs. Sometimes kicks have a little bit of a boxiness. You might want to get rid of some of the mid. So it actually starts at 100%, and you can decrease that or increase that to taste. The air is going to help with that attack. It's going to try to do the same job as a transient, more or less. The tape is just going to...
Why do you have them... Wait, so if the air is doing the same thing as a transient, why do you have the air and the transient?
Tape
Cyrenix, you're actually starting to see what's going on, actually. You'll see.
This, I think, works for harder kicks, things like big room kicks and hardstyle kicks, where you really want to bring the tone and some of the grittiness out of it. Compression, this is just going to be a simple compressor. Now, with the width, it starts at 100%. You can decide whether to add width if you're doing some crazy hardstyle thing, or you can decrease width to make sure that your kick isn't too wide, which generally should be the case. Shouldn't be too wide. So there you have it. We got that from this.
I know. $100 plugin, by the way.
Young producers out there.
Wait,
it will help.
This is one of my favorite parts. This is one of my favorite parts of this video. The outro is my favorite part.
Skip through some of the fluff. I'm really hoping.
Mixing. I want to run that back. Mixing your plugins is the fluff.
I think that sounds better. I think for young producers out there, it will help skip through some of the fluff. I'm really hoping that it just helps get the kind of silly part of production out of the way, which is you might have a good idea, but it just doesn't sound like a finished song. You just don't maybe understand some of the basics of production, EQing things the right way, compressing the right way. And it's not perfect, and it's not maybe as advanced as some people would want. And there are, of course, EQs for that. I mean, music should be about great ideas. So if a kid is an interesting kid, he's got an interesting brain, interesting ideas. These things like EQ and compression, forget what the purists say, they shouldn't be an obstacle for him. He should be able to express those ideas.
Forget what the purists say.
Do that quicker, then that's the whole point of it. Nothing frustrates me more when I'm making music than all of the sort of janitorial work, I call it.
Mixing engineers are officially janitors. But here's the fucking thing, Kashmir. Here's the thing. When you say that mixing engineers are janitors, you know what we're learning right now? You know what we're learning right now in fucking COVID-19? Janitors are like literally essential fucking workers. So guess what? All you're saying is mixing is essential, you fucking rube.
You're cleaning up EQs, all of the custodial work associated
Custodial work.
That doesn't have to do with creativity. It doesn't have to do with the ideas.
Now, I literally bought a program because of this plugin. This is called Plugin Doctor. Plugin Doctor is an analysis tool designed to help you see what different effects are actually doing, and if you're making your own VSTs, it helps you diagnose them. It's useful for people who do beta testing, it's useful for people who make their own synthesizers, it's useful for any sort of audio engineer. Now, I've already done this, so I know generally what I'm looking for. All right, so where is it? KSHMR Essentials, VST, load plugin. So, what you're seeing on the left right here, if I turn all this off, this flat line is the frequency curve. What we're currently doing is called a null test. We have two copies of the same signal, generally some sort of impulse. You can see kind of like these light clicky lines right here. That's the impulse of the signal. And then it's taking the signal and it's inverting it against itself in phase. And if you've been in any one of my streams in the past like 2 weeks, at some point I've probably talked about phase cancellation, where if you have one waveform that goes up and the other waveform goes down, they cancel out because you're taking a positive signal and a negative signal and adding them together. This does that, except on one chain they apply the plugin and on the other they do not. So what we're going to see is as I adjust these parameters, what we'll find is the difference between the two signals, the delta of the two signals. as I increase the mid, the only thing that really seems to happen to the frequency range is the about 120 hertz range gets louder. And it comes back down. And it comes back to 0. Now, as I increase the air, it looks like we're just seeing an increase in the about the 12K range. So it looks like increasing air pretty much just adds high end. Okay, let's see what pressure does. Okay, so literally it's just turning up the sound and boosting the volume of the low frequencies. Okay, interesting. What happens when you increase the tape? Oh, it's just turning down all the frequencies. Probably because it's doing other stuff to the sound. It's doing other stuff to the sound. But right now we're seeing these as essentially just an EQ. And this is just adding in a sine wave. This is just adding in a sine wave at whatever pitch. That's just adding in a sine wave. Now, looking at the phase, we can also see the shift to the phase. We can see this right here, which EQs, you expect to see phase shifts. So this is not unexpected. This is not unexpected. This is also not unexpected. If this is a transient shaper, oof. I set this to 1, we'd immediately see a huge phase inversion at 500 hertz. This is not expected, I think. I would not necessarily expect a plugin to do this. Now, I haven't done a lot of one-to-one comparisons with other effects, with other transient shapers, with other plugins that would do a similar sort of role. So I'm not going to say this is necessarily a problem, but seeing things like this gives me pause. Same with the comp, width, same sort of thing. If the width is not at 100, boop, we see that. And there's definitely multi-band splitting going on. What's your question? You said what else has 8 knobs? Yeah. Do you see anything? Is this an EQ8? Well, you're close. You're close. I'll give you a hint. Is there anything else inside of Ableton that has 8 knobs? Is there anything else because we saw that KSHMR uses Ableton Live, right? Is there anything else that you know that works inside of Ableton that uses 8 knobs? Does anyone have any idea? And I'm going to show you a screenshot from Discord in a little bit. If I go into Mr. Bill's Discord, we actually have been talking about this quite a lot, and you can see things like real quick, things like this. Because I want to provide some receipts, right? I want to provide a little bit of receipts. Hold up. Stuff like this. That's kind of weird, right? Lots of things like that. Lots of things like that. Also, so you can see, here's me testing a bunch of different things. Where is it? Here we go. This is my favorite part of the whole thing. This is from KSHMR himself. Man, I can't take any credit for the coding. That was all done by WA Production. Now, WA Production is well known for making really low quality budget plugins that are really not good. They're very glitchy, they're very phasey, they're very aliasy, they're not that good. But they do something fast and cheap. And they're developers. My involvement was creating racks in Ableton with macros. My involvement was creating racks in Ableton with macros, which they then recreated with original EQs, compressors, etc., which is basically the impressive part. But I did do the GUI. I'm a noob graphic designer. This is a $100 plugin that essentially recreates Ableton Live racks that you can make for free inside of Ableton Live. Primarily, it's just an EQ. Now let me show you some videos on my Twitter. So, obviously, this is what we already looked at with air. This is what happens when you add air. So I've been checking out a lot of these things, like what happens when you crank the mid, see how it actually just kind of turns things up. And then let's start the compressor. Whoa. It's just turning things up, and then it gives us this nice little dip right here. Whoop. Great plugin. Great plugin. Making a lot of dynamics changes to your shit. Yeah, I've done plenty of tests, and I will say, with a lot of this stuff, it's all what we see. It's not what we hear. Why no? So this plugin is essentially a bunch of equalizer presets right here. See, this is just equalizer motion. That's all that's really happening here. It's just changing the EQ. We can look at the oscillation and see what happens to it here. Nothing. This just makes it louder. This does nothing to it. This just makes it louder. But they all seem to change the frequency response in some dramatic way. They all seem to shift the phase in some subtle or dramatic way. Some of them change the dynamics. You can see how much it changes the volume amplitude of the sound. And I don't know, like, I am just very concerned with how a lot of these things happen, because you can see, like, this is the impulse response of the signal, kind of increases a bunch of stuff that I don't think I want. So what we're gonna do is we're actually going to do a couple of A/B tests. We're just gonna do an A/B test on it just to see what happens. So I'm gonna grab just a drum loop real quick, and we're gonna do a couple of A/B tests, right? Cool. So let's bring this in. Let's set the BPM to 140. Nice, simple, basic drum loop, right? Now let's go grab this fucking plugin. Let's see. Put it on drums, and let's look at it and see what's really happening, because that'll really impact the way that I think about it. Because, you can look at a plugin all you want, but it's really what you see on it that matters. I guess I don't need that one. I just need this one for now. So this is with it off, right? Not doing anything. Is it just me, or did the kick kind of disappear when I slam the air? Yeah. We're definitely seeing some dynamic changes just from increasing the air. Now, let's see what happens to the volume. That's one thing I want to check. I want to check the volume real quick. So it's literally adding 10 decibels of high end. That's basically what's happening. That's basically what's happening here. We're just seeing a 10 dB boost to the high end. You want to get air? Hold on, let me show you now how to get air. Hold on, real quick. Let's do some air. Let's do some air. Okay, hold on. I'm Kashmir. Wait, hold on. Let's go ahead and let's do a thing. Let's put this into a rack. Let's put this into an audio effect rack. And let's go ahead and let's map this to macro 1. And we'll call this, I don't know what we'll call this. We'll call this air. Let's call this air, for example. Let's maybe call this air. And then let's set a mapping range. We're going to set this from 0 to, I don't know, like 10 decibels or so, right? Okay. So now, let's do an A/B. Let's do an A/B. Is it just me or did that sound literally identical? So, okay, so now we have air. All right, let's see what body does. Let's see what body does, okay? Looks like just a straight EQ boost. Sounds like just a low shelf boost to me. So hold on, let me go back to this plugin real quick. And let's set another EQ macro here. Let's do a low shelf boost at say like I don't know, 130 hertz or so. Make this moderate. And then we'll do another 10 dB boost. We'll just see what happens. It's probably not 10 dB. It's probably more like, I don't know, 5. So I'll set this to 0. I'll set this to, say, 5, just because it looks like it's not as aggressive. Man, we'll do 10, fuck it. We'll do 10, fuck it. Let's see what happens. Okay. So his seems to go a little bit further. But again, literally the same fucking sound. The same sonic result. This is literally just an EQ. These are just Ableton effects. This is probably the same as drum bus. I'm actually really curious. What happens when we increase transient on here? I want to see this real quick. Hold on. All right, so let's grab, say, drum bus. Let's make sure the drive is at 0, and let's map this to macro 5, for example. All right, so it's not the same. So we can't quite get there exactly with drum bus. So there's actually a benefit. There's our first plus. Our first plus. Oh, look at that phase relationship, dude. Now I wonder how that sounds compared with, say, taking Ableton's utility and increasing the width. Why am I hearing the same thing? Yeah, it's basically just Ableton stock plugins. You don't have Ableton, but is it common practice to sell Ableton racks? Yeah, I would say selling racks is actually fairly common. And if Kashmir was selling his Ableton Live racks, I would actually be 1,000,000 times less upset. I would actually be way less upset about this, because honestly, selling racks is a legitimate practice. It's really useful. It's really effective. I've bought racks before. I think, where is it? Yeah, like I don't think I bought these, but I bought these Loopmaster Neuro racks, which are actually pretty fucking good. I think I got these for free. I think I got these for free and these for free. I think I bought these from Patches, and then these are just some ones I found on the internet. Is this available for FL? Well, yeah, the plugin is available for FL, which is a benefit. But like, again, this is a $100 plugin. You get nickel and dimed out of $5 a month for over a year and a half. For over a year and a half for something that you can make in every single DAW. You can make this in every single DAW. Every single one of these can be remade inside of a DAW. But even then, some of the things kind of worry me about this. Like the spread knob. Let's grab some sort of vocal, because I wanna see what happens, right? So here's my vocals. That feels really weird. What the fuck is happening to stereo, though? That's some weird stuff. Thank you so much to Hey It's Been for that 2-month Prime resub. Thank you so much.
Musa sub Musa ejected.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. But like, it sounds almost like there's some comb filtering going on. Yeah, like you can see right there's something weird is happening. Hold on. Alright, so I just want to take a picture of this real quick, because I want to be able to do a comparison. Something's very clearly different about these two. So let me just go ahead and grab those real quick, because I want to do an A-B comparison between the two. I want to actually directly, physically see what I'm looking at. So this should be the second one. This should be the first one. We can see that it's definitely adding volume to signals. And we can see that, like, up here, this second one, like, it's basically kind of compressing the sound as it spreads it. I guess it's just adding side signal, I want to guess. Like, it's adding a lot of volume to the sound that I don't really like. And, like, if I open up Plugin Doctor, the reason why this is concerning to me is, like, if I load the thing back up in Plugin Doctor, go over here, grab this. Where's my case? When I go to vocals, watch what happens when I turn up the spread. It is doing some weird, phasey thing to the sound. Ooh. Now, again, I don't know if this is what other vocal spreading plugins do, but this scares me. This scares me when I see this. You can even see how it's creating a separation between two signals of audio. How did you get that plugin? So I'm using the free trial. Well, no, that's true, Northmark. But that's kind of why, like, you know, it's good to, say, compare this. So let's compare this with, say, Wider by Polyverse, because that's another one that, you know, I'm not always the most sold on, but it sounds pretty good. It sounds pretty reasonable. So let's grab Wider and load this one up. And let's see what this does to the sound. Very different kind of shape. We still see that difference, but notice how much cleaner this is. And this also shows you what Wider is doing. This is what Wider does, by the way, in case you were wondering. This is how Wider works. It takes the signal, as you increase it, it turns up the frequency in one ear and turns down the frequency in the other. And then it alternates this back and forth, which can actually sound pretty, bad. And that's what we're doing, Frank. That's what we're doing right now. Wider is a stereo testing plugin. I can't test utility. I can't test utility because utility is a native Ableton Live. Well, I guess I could open Plugin Doctor as a... I think you can open Plugin Doctor as a VST. I could be wrong, but you might be able to. No, you cannot. So no, I cannot, unfortunately, open up the plugin here. I can't load up utility, but I wish. What's the difference between the widener and serum dimension effects? Well, let's check it out. Neman. Because this is a good time to kind of show why the way it looks in KSHMR Essential scares me. Why that worries me. Like if we go, say, Ozone Imager, where is it? Ozone 8 Imager, grab this. And we start increasing just the width, right? Oh, there we go. Once you start adding in stereo image, you start to get some stuff. But notice how this is essentially the same sort of effect, by the way. This is the same sort of thing as Polyverse Wider. Same exact thing. We can also kind of see like how, let me set all this back to 0. Set this down. Why is it selecting all of them? Oh, because it's linked. So let's turn this all off. So this is with stereo eyes on, right? As I increase a band, I get more shifting between the left and the right channels, like this. Very clean. You can see the individual slices. There's no motion in them. It all seems pretty consistent. As I increase the stereo, you can see there's tighter and tighter notches and stuff like that. So this is very similar to Polyverse Wider. And I would say this is a totally fine effect. I think this is totally good. My final verdict on this is if you're using the auto gain on and the clipper on, you're generally not hearing a ton of major effects other than the fact that you're having a sound turned up in one frequency range and then everything else gets turned down. So it doesn't give you really a proper understanding of what the effect is doing. And this is why I actually stress the importance of gain staging, because that's what this is doing. This is lying to you. These two things right here mean that KSHMR Essentials is lying to you. What's better is not to use auto gain on a plugin that has auto gain. I do it sometimes, don't get me wrong. There are plenty of moments where I will use auto gain on a plugin, but if you're trying to see what an effect is doing, right? Let's go here. We want to have auto gain off, and let's turn up Harmax. So with it off, my vocal is at -9. With it on, so it's distorting it and turning it down by 9 decibels. That's kind of weird, right? So we want to gain compensate it. It gets quieter because it's distorting. Not really that good. Let's check out fuzz. Before, -9.10. 5.4 over 0. So we'd have to turn this down. What did we say? -9. We'd have to turn this down 14 dB. This is turning up 14 decibels of volume. Okay, let's turn this down by 14. I can't. I literally can't even turn it down by 14. So let's turn it down to, let's turn it down 2 more after. And now let's go ahead and key map both of these to 1, or I guess to 2 technically, because I have that, or I guess that's to Q2, but it's okay. All right, so off, on. It's basically just adding high frequencies. And that's the thing that really worries me about this fucking plugin. Here's my final verdict, okay? Here's my final verdict on KSHMR's Essentials. Buy it if you hate money. If you hate money and you hate yourself, buy this fucking plugin. Otherwise, skip it.